Hey, this is Zach Log the Great. I am here tonight with my friend Chris.
Hello.
And tonight we are joined by the illustrious Dr. Pepper.
Hello.
And we are, or actually, in actuality, this is Nate, who is behind a Dr. Pepper for some reason. And we are getting together to talk about J.R.R. Tolkien's, well, an excerpt from J.R.R. Tolkien's poem, The Lay of Leithian. This excerpt has various titles of its own. I'm calling it The Contest of Finrod and Sauron. Before we get into the poem itself, I did want to say thank you to JB14 for suggesting this poem and for supporting the channel. And again, if you like my if you like my work, if you like my channel, like what I do, please consider supporting me via subscribestar.com/Zacklog-the-great. That's just one R, but I felt like saying it like Tony the Tiger. Anyway. So,
Get all that ad money. Or cease and desist letters.
the second is more likely considering the other content of my channel. Like I said, we are talking about the contest of Finrod and Sauron. So, let me bring up the poem. And we will, let's see. Here we are. That up yet?
Yep.
Okay.
A little
All right.
small on my screen, like it's hard to see the words.
Well, fortunately, you're not the reader tonight. So we'll handle it. Oh, here, can I make that bigger? Well, maybe, yes. Improvement?
I'm cool.
Okay. The Contest of Finrod and Sauron by J.R.R. Tolkien. He chanted a song of wizardry, of piercing, opening, of treachery, revealing, uncovering, betraying. Then sudden, Belagund there swaying, sang in answer a song of staying, resisting, battling against power, of secrets kept, strength like a tower, and trust unbroken, freedom, escape, of changing and of shifting shape, of snares eluded, broken traps, the prison opening, the chain that snaps. Backwards and forwards swayed their song, reeling and foundering as ever more strong the chanting swelled. Felagund fought, and all the magic and might he brought of Elveness into his words. Softly in the gloom they heard the birds singing afar in Nargothrond, the sighing of the sea beyond, beyond the western world on sand of pearls in Elven land. Then the gloom gathered, darkness growing, in Valinor the red blood flowing, beside the sea where the Noldor slew the foam riders, and stealing drew their white ships with their white sails from lamplit havens. The wind wails, the wolf howls, the ravens flee, the ice mutters in the mouths of the sea. The captives sad in Angband mourn. Thunder rumbles, the fires burn, and Finrod fell before the throne. Okay, Chris, would you like to have the first word tonight?
Okay. Well, it feels like I'm about a decade out of really appreciating this because it's been a while since I've read The Lord of the Rings and the Silmarillion. So I had to reacquaint myself with some of this. But as far as just the poem itself, though, I really enjoy the way that, like, especially, the first part where it's describing the purpose, like the purpose of the lines in the lines, like a song of wizardry, of pursing, of opening, of treachery, because that's what's happening in those lines. Like, everything's beginning, it's the first attack, and then like halfway through there, a song of staying, of resisting. It's a bit like the song Hallelujah. It goes like this: the fourth, the fifth, the minor fall, and the major lift, where the words are describing the way the music's going.
Yeah, it's also been a long while for me since I read the Silmarillion. I think it was high school, which, as I've said before, is longer ago than most people would guess, just from looking at me. But yeah, it's been a while since I've read the Silmarillion, and I believe this is actually drawn from some of the materials, from some of the other Tolkien materials that have been published from his notes over the past decade. And I haven't read any of that, so I am I guess you could say I am a bit of a poor Tolkien fan in that regard. But so yeah, I had to go look up, okay, who was Finrod again? Kinslaying, what was going on there? So yeah, like, this poem definitely requires some context to appreciate it fully, but it definitely has like this, especially the second stanza, has this kind of driving force behind it, which is pretty cool. Nate, how about you? What's your first impression on this one?
First impression is that you sent us your sort of proposed thumbnail image the other day, and I purposely didn't respond to you because I wanted to drop this on you without any pretext. And that is that you should have just used the cover for 8 Mile on this thing. Epic rap battle.
Well, yeah, there's
the
that.
thing is, it's very cool, but I don't know, man. I feel like Finrod gives up a little bit. Like, he was not present for the kinslaying. He didn't know about it until a long time later. So to let that be the gotcha thing that, lays him out and breaks his will to resist is, I didn't know white guilt was a thing in Tolkien, but apparently there it is.
Well, it's so, like, one thing, well, I mean, part of it is like, if you look at what's going on in the second stanza, it says where do we have this?
Yeah, he's
all the magic and might, all the magic and might he brought of Elveness into his words. They heard the birds in Nargothrond, and, like, he was drawing his strength. He was drawing his strength. He was drawing, his power, from his people and from, what they have accomplished. And then, like, oh, your people and what they've done. Well, what have your people done? Like, oh, crap.
I'm like, good job. Good job. You found the wrong that we have done, but that doesn't undermine the right that we have done. Our evil deed is terrible, but it doesn't make everything we've done evil. It doesn't invalidate, our power and our wisdom. It just means that for a minute there, we were led astray by a demagogue. Yes, this is all that. 100. Thank you, earbuds. I needed to know you had low batteries. It's trying to shut me down while I get my powerful verse going. No, but he folds, and I'm like, come on, man.
Okay,
be like, yes, okay, you brought up our stain, but that doesn't, it doesn't.
Nate, you're cutting in and out, like, occasionally. is there something you can do? Can they be charged while you're using them? Is that a thing? No.
Yeah, we can't hear you at all.
Yeah.
There you go.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, but it's well, it's also the kind of thing where it's not necessarily that totally defeated him, but you know, depending on like the context, depending on what else is going on, all it might take is throwing him for a minute, breaking his concentration, breaking his focus for a brief time, and giving Sauron the opportunity he needs.
Right, like a weak point in the armor. It's like it might be relatively strong armor, but if you just have that one little weak point to get your leverage in, then that's all you really need.
Okay, so I do feel like we should give. I don't think we need to read the entire Lord of the Rings wiki articles, but I do feel like we should give a brief explanation for things in here. So for one thing, Sauron is the bad guy here. This takes place during a long, long time before the Lord of the Rings. And Sauron actually isn't the big bad in this one. Sauron is actually basically the second rung down at this point. And the big bad is variously Melkor or Morgoth, depending on what day of the week it is. And there is once again this magical artifact of amazing power that people are fighting over. At this point, it is not the One Ring, but it is the, I don't know how many there were. Was it 7 originally? But this is the Silmarils, which are magical gemstones created from the light of trees, the trees which the sun and the moon are actually fruit of. And so
I said they're created by Fëanor, who is an extremely powerful elf, and waged numerous wars. There have been wars waged over him. Fëanor himself for all his power and ability, was a bit of a jackass. And could get a bit genocide-y about things.
Yeah, in terms of scale, the Lord of the Rings, which we think of as this like big epic thing, was actually kind of like a small little footnote to all of this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
We just read about it the opposite way.
And the kinslaying, which is like Chris and I said, kind of what threw Finrod and let Sauron get that let Sauron get the devastating punch in, I guess you could say. The kinslaying was an event that was led by Fëanor. They were on another continent. They wanted to take some boats back to what is now Middle Earth, to take the fight to fight Melkor, which is a reasonable thing to want. And the people who had the boats were like, "No, those are ours. We don't think that's a good plan. We're not doing that." And Fëanor was like, "Yes, we are doing that. And if necessary, we're doing that over your dead body," and then proceeded to make the bodies dead and do it.
Grand Theft Auto.
That too. Which actually, one thing about that's kind of interesting to me is it reminds me of something C.S. Lewis says about the nature of evil, which is that, I don't know if he'd said always, but generally, perhaps even always, Evil is the pursuit of a good end in the wrong way. What people want, what people are trying to achieve when they do evil, is generally at least some minor good, even if it only be enjoyment for a minute. But they are going about it the wrong way, and there's this horrible guy. He stole things from me. I want to go beat the crap out of him and get that back. It's not actually that bad. Like the motive.
But I've got to kill 5 or 6 of my cousins to borrow their car and drive across town to get this guy.
Right. That's where it goes wrong. Trying to do something. His end goal was not that bad. Was perhaps even good, but he went about it in the wrong way.
Also, if I understand this correctly, also all of the literal angels that you follow are telling you don't do this.
Yeah.
There's that too, yes. And so, one other interesting thing to me about, like I say, it's been a long time since I've read the Silmarillion, but I do, distinctly remember the, part that made the biggest impression on me is the opening, where the world is created through song, through the singing of a choir of angels, and God is God in their world is basically giving them general themes, and then they build it up together, and so if in this world the world is literally created in song, in music, then Finrod and Sauron singing at each other is not necessarily a minor thing.
No, that's actually what I was thinking about. Is it's kind of cool to see, what's interesting also is that Melkor is actually the Dark Angel. He is actually one of the celestial beings that helped to create the universe. It's just that he wanted to inject discord and sing his own thing. And everybody, all the other, what are you doing? And so eventually God was like, fine, or
Eru.
Yeah, Eru, the sort of ultimate god of this setting, basically was like, fine, you know what? Hoof, and took him out of sort of the celestial plane and chucked him into the into sort of the mortal realm and be like, there, deal with it. And so he's literally a dark god on this plane, causing problems for everyone. And so watching his second in command go up against basically one of the sort of most wise and good people, it's sort of it's a bit like thinking about Gabriel versus the demon in the Bible, where it's hey, yeah, sorry I took so long to get here. It's this demonic prince withstood me for all these days, and so I finally I had to just break through, and so it's a bit like that battle, it's you're right, it's not a small thing. They're actually sort of using the medium from which everything is sprung.
Well, and in Christianity we have the idea, whenever Jesus was being tempted, he used scripture to rebuff Satan's advances. There was a sort of similar dynamic going on. So yeah, it's that was the big thing that jumped out to me, is this is what the universe is made of. They're tapping into the actual fabric of the universe and throwing their will behind it. But also when the Valar were singing and creating the universe through that song, all the points where Melchior, his band sort of, made enough noise to start to drown out the rest of them, that corresponds to all the parts in history where evil actually makes their advances and things start looking really bad for the side of good. So this they're basically repeating the song that's already been sung at the creation.
And that's really awesome. And it's kind of interesting going through the stories, like how the way like language works. And they're like, Elvish is supposed to be like this almost seductive, beautiful, haunting sort of tongue. And everybody else's speech sort of devolves down from there, until you get to sort of like this neutral speech. And then it goes beyond that, or it's kind of like, okay, I'm just talking, right? You have, and then as things get worse, you actually end up with like these very harsh, grating, nasty sounding tongues, until you end up at apparently like the nastiest speech, which is this sort of perverse Elvish. And so it sort of like wraps the whole needle. It's like this circular continuum of language, with like the most beautiful, the most uplifting speech, and right next to it it's twisted, broken brother, which is like the foulest of speech of all.
Well, and this is also, and I probably refer to him a little too much, but something I've seen C.S. Lewis talk about, and he was quoting someone else, which I don't know who that was, but like he said, lilies that fester smell worse than weeds, and that which is the better something is, the way it ought to be, the worse it becomes when it's corrupted. And so like the this language of evil and corruption is not just this is not a stupid incoherent speech. It is the language of the elves, corrupted and turned to bad ends. And so I think that's an interesting I think that like kind of fits in with what Nate was saying a minute ago.
Yeah, well, and if you want somebody that loves language and the power of words, and I mean, you can't go wrong with Tolkien. So while it's not necessarily like different languages having different power, like within language, you have that, because you can tell, like you can say everything that happened in this poem and just have it be completely boring. Like, oh yeah,
a couple of guys yelled at each other for.
Yeah. Then one of them lost, but then you have this. Where like he chanted a song of wizardry, of piercing, opening treachery, revealing, uncovering, betraying. Then sudden Felagund there swaying. Like you can actually
already.
Yeah,
Mom's
like
spaghetti.
Well, yeah, like it's like you can use language in such a way as it has power beyond the mere words that you're saying, that will create emotion, will create a sense of urgency, of unease. That's something you can do within a language.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it's always fun to find the hook too. Like what's the turn of phrase that's going to really take this to the level I want it to be. And so sometimes it's fun just when it comes to you and you're like, oh, this is great. But then sometimes, you get started and you're like, I know I'm going to need to do something here. And you kind of let it go. And you're like, I know where I need to arrive. But I don't know exactly what the landing is going to look like. And you let it, you kind of ride on what you're already saying. You kind of let things flow a little bit. And then it's like the words almost create themselves for you, because you're like, okay, yeah. And they can give you a good place to come down. So I almost feel like Finrod was getting ready to be done here. Like he was like, getting into like, his wrap up, and then Sauron comes along and just takes his knees out. Like, oh yeah, what about that time y'all murdered all your kinfolk?
It's what was but the sorry. What Chris was saying a minute ago, like the power of having the word of that you can get in words. There's a quote attributed to Mark Twain. Although he is one of those people that gets his name stuck on various quotes, sometimes erroneously. But the difference between the right word and the almost right word is quite a large matter. It's the difference between the lightning and the lightning bug. So one thing I find kind of interesting, and I guess this is a little more, again, in the context of the whole story. What is it? Finrod was captured with a group of elves who were like basically trying to break into Angband, which was Sauron's forest at the time, which was basically Mordor plus 100 or something, Mordor times 100.
Mordor with multiple Balrogs, the entire race of dragons,
But so Finrod was captured, and basically Sauron was trying to figure out who this group of elves was and what they were there for. But it is kind of interesting to me, and so that's the context. So that kind of explains something. But it's kind of interesting to me that like the evil side is looking at revealing, uncovering, like opening things up, and the side of good is secrets kept, trust unbroken, and I don't know where this fits in the larger poem, but it's kind of interesting to me because it seems like instinctively today we tend to think of keeping secrets, hiding things away, and like it seems like that's the bad guy usually. People who are trying, like someone keeping secrets, and I mean obviously there are contexts where even where people we agree with, people who are pursuing good ends have to keep secrets. It is kind of interesting to me that it's like revealing and uncovering things, like trying to, we say sunlight is there's this saying, sunlight is the best disinfectant. But what are the secrets that good people need to keep is kind of an interesting question, I guess. And I guess it's who you're keeping it from too.
There's that, and also, like I said, it's the trust unbroken. If you're entrusted with information in confidence, you keep it confidential.
Chris, you there?
Yes.
Okay, sorry, I hadn't heard from you in a minute.
I don't know. I worked in a place with lots of secrets. I was like, I'm glad all this is secret. This is good. People don't need to know this, and if people did know this, there would be problems. Not because we're doing anything shady, but because we're plotting the demise of our enemies.
You can't handle the truth. Sorry.
Like I said, I feel like those are secrets that should be kept. I mean, if your enemies are people who will kill you for believing differently, or who will happily allow the world to burn because of those people so that they can gain an advantage in the long run, then yes, these are bad people. These people need to be thwarted and, if necessary, destroyed. And if losing these secrets, if giving up this information is going to hinder or even, remove the possibility of doing that, then of course you need to keep these secrets. Of course this information needs to stay undercover. I mean, what reasonable person would say no to that just because secret's bad?
Yeah, I get, like I said, it's this I guess I don't know if it's everyone, but for me it's this kind of instinctive thing, telling the truth, being open and honest, that usually feels like the more natural, the more like the side of good. Although it does this conversation does remind me a little bit of a fascinating book I read a few years ago, and I will have to pull out again sometime before long, which is Cryptonomicon by
Yes.
Neil Stevenson, um, which is largely about codes and code breaking, and and it's draws upon some real things from World War II, based on a true story. Which is about based as much as Hollywood usually is based on a true story. There's very loose connections here.
Yeah, based on historical concepts.
Yeah, and during World War II, keeping secrets and being able to pass information without your enemy hearing was a very big deal, and the fact that the Allies were, for whatever reason, reliably able to break the enemy's codes was an enormous advantage.
We captured their enciphering equipment, and so we could use it to decipher. We're like, yeah, this is great.
Yeah,
Although
but if we acted on any of that information, we also had to have a plausible explanation for how we knew that without having broken it.
Which led to
yeah, which leads to the interesting dilemma of okay, such and such is about to happen, but if you act on that, they will figure out you broke their codes, and you will lose the long-term advantage. So, well, I guess we gotta let that British village be bombed. Screw those guys. What can we do?
And
it's not screw those guys. It's this really hurts, but we have to make a decision. And what we have decided is the casualties we'll incur from that are not worth more than this unimaginable battlefield or strategic advantage. It's more than a battlefield advantage. It's more than a campaign success or failure. It's the war.
Or a more lighthearted example, no, we didn't invent radar. We just feed all of our pilots carrots so they can see really well.
Yes. Beta carotene, baby. But freaking no, it's ridiculous. And so this idea of truth and uncovering versus hiding and all of that, it just points to one immutable fact. And that is that the Jedi were wrong. And let me say why that is. Secrets. Words.
They were right from a certain point of view.
Everybody's right from a certain point of view, and most of those people are wrong.
Sorry, that was just the what's his Obi-Wan. Well, it was true from a certain point of view. Go ahead. I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
Obi-Wan, you're a terrible Jedi. Get out of my face. Anyway, well, all the Jedi were terrible, really, when you think about it. And I will prove this. All right, so secrets and truth. The ability to speak. Weapons, tools, money. They're all sources of power. Okay? Power is not good. Power is not bad. Power is just power. The only moral statement you can make about it is looking at how it is employed. If you use your power to uplift the downtrodden, to defend the weak, and to, it says to give succor to the poor, to try and heal the sick, you do things like that, it's good power. If you use it to impoverish, sicken, tear down and oppress people, your power is evil. But ultimately, power, just like a weapon, just like anything else, is good or bad based on how you use it. And so the Jedi were wrong. There is no light side. There is no dark side. The Force is just power. The light and dark reside within the user. And so building your extremist philosophy around this idea that power is either innately good or innately bad and it has its own dipoles is stupid. It's just power. You idiots are the reason that some people are having dark side problems. Maybe if you didn't teach an extremist ascetic philosophy that says that you can have nothing but the Force or you can have nothing at all, you're fools. You teach people, control those feelings. Don't divorce yourself from reality. Don't divorce yourself from attachments, and do not be controlled by them. You learn discipline. And then you learn that, hey, maybe we're all people together and we can understand these people who are lured by the ability to use power in dark and terrible ways. And maybe, just maybe, we can help people understand those urges instead of just saying, you're instantly a villain. We have to just try and take you out. Maybe you could have actually, got something going here instead of all of y'all being dead. Idiots.
I would just like to, my contribution to this part is I would just like to say I hate sand.
Yeah, as far as I'm concerned, like Star Wars is just the Mandalorian now.
That's very good, and I will keep it. All I can say is sand has not been sufficiently processed because glass is pretty baller.
Okay, but I was gonna say, on a slightly more serious note, I agree with a lot of that. I will add one more thing though, in terms of like the use of power, what you use it for being good or bad. I think one other thing you definitely have to take into account is the idea of humility along with that. Because, no matter how much power you have, like, you're not God, you're not in control of everything, and, you think, oh, I'm fixing this problem over here, I have this power, I can go fix this, not a big deal, but there's the law of unintended consequences. Oh, you fixed that problem, and completely unawares, you just caused 5 other problems that end up being much, much bigger, much more destructive, because you thought, I have power, I'm going to fix this. And so, with the best of intentions, using power carelessly, using power thinking, I know what I'm doing, I have good intentions, I'm going to fix things, can lead to some very destructive things. Like I was saying about, Finrod and the kinslaying. Like, this guy stole my stuff. Not only did he steal my stuff, it's really important stuff. We can use it for the good of everyone. We gotta go kick his butt and get it back. That's actually not that bad a motive, but, well, we have the power to take these boats. You're not standing in our way.
No, and that's where I said.
That's a problem.
Yeah, and that's one of the things you have to, be able to learn is that humility, like you're saying. But if you get too worried about, what could the knock-on effects be? What could the unintended consequences be? They could be terrible. You're right. But if you allow yourself to do that, you have no reason to have power anyway, because you'll be paralyzed by fear.
Well, so and I think a lot of
move.
I think a lot of the unintended consequences come from say you want to help somebody, but you just decide that you know how to help them, and you don't actually talk to them or find out what things look like from their side.
Yeah, I mean that's part of it too, although depending on what you're helping them with and why they need help, they might not have much of a good idea either. But
yeah.
So to bring back our motto for this show, to get back to the poem.
I just want to point out that the poem does mention sand.
Yes.
Yeah.
But those are sand of pearls. They're not going to be coarse and irritating. They're probably going to feel fantastic.
It was irritating for the oysters.
Well.
Okay. But anyway, what I was going to say, another thing I find, really nice about this poem, like I said, that middle section has this momentum. It pulls you along as this is going on, And then another interesting thing Tolkien does in the last stanza, um, their white ships with their white sails from lamplit havens, the wind wails, the wolf howls, the ravens flee, and he has these short, short sentences. This, and it's kind of fascinating because like it, completely brings you to a stop. The wind wails, the wolf howls, the ravens flee, and his pacing with this whole thing, both in terms of the feeling of rushing through it and the feeling of just being brought to a sudden screeching halt when Finrod's collapsing, is really impressive. I in terms of like technical effects there.
No, it very much was. Like I said, and it kind of goes, I feel like just that change in presentation really highlights what we were talking about earlier with the languages. Because, beautiful flowing Elvish, and then you get the idea of just Sauron sitting there spitting these short, harsh sentences. And it's just like, and you're like, oh, God. It's like, this is terrible. This is saying something terrible, and it sounds terrible. It's like anti-eloquence.
Finrod's got this like nice rapier that's all beautiful hilt work and everything, and then Sauron just has like a big war hammer that is just brutal and simple.
One thing,
bad. I mean, it's not even.
One thing I find kind of interesting, and I wish I'd looked up before because I don't know where these events take place in the timeline. No, this must be before that. Because in Sauron, early in Middle Earth's history, he was a deceiver. He would take this shape and that to like persuade people to follow along, to go along with his cause. And then one interesting thing in what is it? I think when Numenor fell, which he helped engineer, he was able to escape the destruction of the island of Numenor, but the cost of his escape was that he could no longer change shape. He could no longer take another appearance. He was stuck where he was, and it's kind of interesting trying to see where this is. Is this still Sauron who could appear to be this beautiful persuasive creature, or was this Sauron who what he is out there on its face? And this was Sauron who could change shape, which is interesting because it's Finrod who is trying to appeal to that kind of thing here. I'm rambling.
Yeah, the lore for Lord of the Rings is ridiculously deep.
Yeah, and like I said earlier, I'm about 10 years removed from all of this.
But let's see, what else?
When you realize that Sam, Pippin, Merry, and all that aren't the Hobbit's actual names. Those are translations of the names that he gave them in Hobbit or whatever the language is.
Huh.
I read like this whole Tumblr post about it one time. Somebody was like, just found this, and it's like, holy cow, Lord of the Rings is ridiculous. Yeah, their names are actually something else. And then he's acting like he's translating all this. So he translates the names that he gave them in the language he made up into a different language he made up, and then into English.
Yeah, in the edition of The Lord of the Rings that I read, at the end there was a whole translator's note thing, which is, of course, entirely fictional. But it went over all of that.
Wait, this is fictional? I have to go think about this for a while.
I think you've been thinking about it too much already. What's interesting is that, this idea of, like these crazy rap battles. There's actually a Norse thing too that like Northmen would do to each other. And it's basically you get two guys up in their faces and you just throw out diss tracks at each other, just like, yeah, you know what? Like, you've got a dull axe and an even duller face. And you just throwing just slam poetry at each other, and it's like you could really wreck somebody's whole day by whooping them at a flitting match.
So you're picturing this as Sauron and Finrod trading yo mamas?
Like I said, it's a rap battle, man. I saw a thing the other day, and it had this young man. He's calling his grandmother. Says, "Hey Nana, yeah, no, I need you to come pick me up. Yeah, no, yeah, the rap battle's over. No, I lost. Yeah, the other guy saw you drop me off, and he just frankly he dropped a really devastating rhyme about it. I just couldn't get back in it." And honestly, that's the first thing that came to mind after I read this. I was like, oh man.
I was thinking along the lines, if we need to get this to Lin-Manuel Miranda, this will be the next Hamilton.
No. Okay. Well, I mean, Christopher Tolkien's dead, and he was basically the guardian of his father's work, and the people who are taking charge of Middle Earth now are are likely to be not nearly as careful and respectful. So we shall see where that goes. But I think I've said most of the things I wanted to here. Nate, how about you?
Yeah, I believe I've said everything I want to say.
Chris, any last thoughts on the poem? Anything you wanted to cover that we didn't get to?
No. In fact, like half the stuff I was gonna say, y'all got to it before I did.
Sorry.
Okay. Well, in that case, thank you for getting together, guys. I hope everyone watching this enjoyed the talk, and God be with you.
And also with you.
Have a good one.